And we've never seen real price discovery. I mean, look, there has been 8 central banks, 8 Western banks, sorry, not central, commercial, 8 banks that have held the largest short position, concentrated at that, of any commodity traded in the history of COMEX and silver. They've been suppressing the price. Why would 8 Western banks do this? Why? Well, I have come out and very publicly said I believe it has more to do with the military-industrial complex than anything. There's copious amounts of silver needed in all the high-tech military equipment. I think silver is asymmetrically incredibly intriguing. I do. I mean, you got Bank of America saying it can go from this year, by the end of this year, look, I never tell people to buy metal to become wealthy. It is wealth. But they're saying if things go the way they could, it could be anywhere between 130 and 309 by the end of this year. You don't get that kind of potential with gold. However, I do believe gold will go to the moon to devalue the dollar, to bring back manufacturing.
The precious metals market is experiencing historic volatility as geopolitical chaos and an expanding war disrupt global supply chains, pushing gold near $4,500 an ounce and slamming silver with massive price swings. While short-term trading remains wild, institutional giants like Bank of America are projecting that silver could skyrocket anywhere between $130 and $309 by the end of the year. We are entering a critical window where standard economic rules no longer apply. A massive structural supply deficit has entered its 6th consecutive year, and investors are suddenly realizing that paper currencies are losing their grip. The urgency to protect your wealth has never been higher, and waiting for a dip could mean missing the boat entirely. To make sense of this unprecedented market setup, we are joined by industry expert AndySchectman, president of Miles Franklin, who breaks down exactly why silver is currently the most compelling asymmetric trade in the world. Schectman exposes how a concentrated short position held by 8 major Western commercial banks has artificially suppressed silver prices for decades on the COMEX. He delivers a jaw-dropping take on why this distortion exists, revealing a hidden connection to the military-industrial complex and the high-tech weaponry that relies on this scarce, inelastic metal. But how much longer can these powerful institutions suppress the true price of wealth before the entire system snaps? Stick around until the end to find out exactly what triggers the breaking point. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
You call silver the most asymmetric trade in the world. Why?
Yeah, low downside, high upside. It is. And we've never seen real price discovery. I mean, look, there has been 8 central banks, 8 Western banks, sorry, not central, commercial, 8 banks that have held the largest short position, concentrated at that, of any commodity traded in the history of COMEX and silver. They've been suppressing the price. Why would 8 Western banks do this? Why? Well, I have come out and very publicly said I believe it has more to do with the military-industrial complex than anything. There's copious amounts of silver needed in all the high-tech military equipment. NATO wants to sell their military equipment made in the United States all around the world, or we want to sell it to NATO. And all the NATO countries, most of it made in the United States, all these contracts, you need silver to make this high-tech weaponry. Now, silver is something called inelastic, meaning there's only a little bit in a high-priced item. So if, there's $30,000 worth of silver in a super high-tech missile that costs, $12 million, what the hell do they care what the price is? It's more along the lines of if the world really understood how scarce silver is, they might actually prioritize owning it. And so, yeah, I think silver is far more valuable than people would ever agree to. It being because of the distortion and not, if you took the suppression by 8 Western banks, the only question is why the hell would 8 banks do this? It's a tiny little market. They're suppressing silver specifically, in my mind, for the military-industrial complex. Let me give you just so we can separate fact from fiction and from rumor or from innuendo or from conspiracy. There are 2 videos, and they're both by this interviewing the same guy with the same story. His name was Bart Chilton. Bart Chilton was the head of the CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission. He interviewed 2 of my friends, was interviewed by 2 of my friends over a very short period of time, and then he died about a week later. He supposedly died of cancer. Maybe he was a sick man clearing his conscience. I'm not saying it was a result of this, but nonetheless, I'll tell you in a moment, he was interviewed by Andrew Maguire, And he was interviewed by Chris Marcus of Arcadia Economics. You can still find these interviews. You can type in Chris Marcus, Arcadia Economics / Bart Chilton, or Andrew Maguire / Bart Chilton, where he told the same story. And the story goes like this. Bear Stearns, according to Bart Chilton, the head of the CFTC, that's like the SEC for commodities, he says the reason largely, not entirely, but largely that Bear Stearns failed was because they held the world's largest short position in silver. And when silver went from 9 to 21, they got clobbered and they went out of business. And he says, I was in Hank Paulson's office, who was the Treasury Secretary, along with Ben Bernanke, and we called Jamie Dimon into the office and said, Jamie, we need you to take this short position. And Jamie said, okay, guys, I'll do it, but that will put JP Morgan in violation of position limits. Oh, don't worry about it. Clean up your house. We'll give you like 90 days. We'll clean it up and then come back. You're good. I'm sure he got lots of concessions. At the end of the 90-day period, Bart Chilton says, you know, I look at it and they've increased their short position. They didn't decrease it. And I went into Paulson's office and said, these guys not only are in violation of our agreement, they increased their position. They're in violation of antitrust law. They need to be prosecuted. He said, and I quote, back down, Bart, it's a political decision. So he died a week later, 10 days later. And all I can tell you is that I almost fell off my chair when they fully understood this. Now, JP Morgan then a few years later paid a $920 million fine to the Justice Department, the largest they've ever handed out at that point, for manipulating the precious metals market. And yet, by the infinite wisdom of those regulators like the CFTC, who is the custodian of the largest silver trust in the world, it's JP Morgan. And how about GLD, one of the largest stockpiles of gold in the world? Oh, it's JP Morgan and
surprise.
BlackRock in both cases, right?
AndySchectman reveals a massive paradigm shift happening behind closed doors that could completely shatter Western financial dominance. Powerful global players like China, India, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are quietly abandoning the US dollar, bypassing the SWIFT system, and setting up independent networks like SIPS and Enbridge to settle international trade directly in physical gold. But the real shockwave is hitting the COMEX pricing system. For nearly 4 decades, less than 1% of futures contracts ever requested actual physical metal. Now, an unprecedented surge of buyers are suddenly rejecting paper promises and demanding physical delivery of their wealth. This structural shift threatens to expose the true scarcity of silver and gold, pushing the market past its breaking point. As the global elite pull their wealth outside the traditional matrix, a critical question remains. Are you prepared for what happens when the paper gold market completely runs out of physical metal? Stay tuned to see how you can protect yourself before the music stops.
If someone is underexposed right now, what do? Gold or silver? Or
I think silver is asymmetrically incredibly intriguing. I do. I mean, you got Bank of America saying it can go from this year, by the end of this year, look, I never tell people to buy metal to become wealthy. It is wealth. But they're saying if things go the way they could, it could be anywhere between 130 and 309 by the end of this year. You don't get that kind of potential with gold. However, I do believe gold will go to the moon to devalue the dollar, to bring back manufacturing. How does that happen? This Genius Act, which goes into effect next year, is what's going to drive it way higher, way massively higher. And so I think gold will go very high as well. In the end, right now, I think silver is the place to be. But in the end, when the gold-silver ratio corrects to what it should correct to, and that's the thesis behind Bank of America's $300 silver, gold will be tied to the global monetary system. I think if a genie came out of the bottle and said you get one trade only, it's gold. If they said you get two, you buy silver now, and when the ratio switches, you flip it to gold. That is the playbook. In the end, gold, when the music stops right now, silver, especially if you're young, it's the opportunity of a generation. And I don't say that lightly. Plus, it has no counterparty risk, and you're outside the matrix, you're outside the system. There are very few things that will do that for you. And you look at China, you look at India, you look at Russia, you look at Saudi Arabia, they're all massively accumulating gold and silver, and they have set up parallel systems through SIPS, the cross-interbank payment system, through Enbridge, which is a digital cross-border settlement system for central banks. They're set up, they are operational, and they are all bypassing the SWIFT system, using their own local currencies and settling imbalances in gold instead of U.S. Treasuries. What they are doing for the very first time ever is challenging the hegemony by standing for delivery. If you remember the very first Star Wars movie, you know, there's that little, in the Death Star, that little hole they had to get the missile, and never going to happen. That is the exact same thing on these contracts. Less than 1% of contracts have ever stood for delivery my entire 36-year career. And now all of a sudden, over the last couple, you're getting gazillions standing for delivery because they understand, you know, my example where I'm hedging my, you know, my inventory, or a farmer who is planting a field in April, finding, you know, meeting the baker who needs the wheat in September, meeting in the middle to offset risk of the growing season, of getting the wheat, or the producer or the miner of metal sells his production to be happy with the price. They're happy, he's happy. That's what COMEX is for. It's turned into anything but that. No one ever stood for delivery. Now they are. They found that one weak spot, right, of the Death Star, and they're standing for delivery nonstop, but not too fast, not too aggressively, to otherwise spook the markets. And when they suppress the price on paper, yes, but when they suppress the price on paper in the United States, it's the only place that sets the price. So they can do the same thing themselves, short the paper futures contracts and stand for delivery all around the world where the price has been set without disrupting the price. So it's a big game, and the moral of the story is that the biggest money in the world is aware of what we have been doing for a long time, and the way that they win is not by getting into a military conflict, but to slowly accumulate all of the world's commodities, slowly, until there's no one wanting to sell them anymore at the dollar price. And that's when we will see prices move to exchanges like in Dubai, like in St. Petersburg, like in Shanghai. And what the Shanghai Metals Exchange is doing, they're expanding their infrastructure, their vaults all around the world. There's already one in Saudi Arabia. There's already one in Hong Kong, which when metal leaves China comes out of Hong Kong. They're building one in the UAE. They're building one in Zurich. And then all throughout the Belt Road Initiative, so that they can store gold in all of these vaults, as can other countries. They will trade with each other over parallel systems that are not compliant with SWIFT, settle imbalances in gold.
To wrap up, AndySchectman leaves us with a stark realization: the old playbook for protecting wealth is completely broken. As the traditional financial system fracturing accelerates, we are seeing a massive paradigm shift away from paper promises and toward hard, unbackable assets. The explosive combination of a decades-long artificial price suppression, weaponized currencies, and a structural supply deficit that cannot keep up with industrial and military demand means the clock is ticking. When the music stops, paper contracts won't save your purchasing power. Only physical gold and silver in your possession will stand the test of time. The global elite are already making their move outside the matrix, quietly stacking physical metal while leaving the public holding depreciating fiat cash. The window to position yourself ahead of this historic transfer of wealth is closing fast. What is your strategy when the paper market finally defaults? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay ahead of these historic market moves, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps the channel grow and keeps you informed when the markets shift next.